Hello everyone, this is Zagony333, and we're going to review the movie Watchmen today. Now this is a movie that I was a big fan of back in high school. Had this, I obviously have this hoodie and stuff, this Watchmen hoodie and everything. And funny enough, I was even jokingly referred to as the Watchmen kid sometimes back then too, so don't know whether those assholes were making fun of me or, complimenting me. But I choose to take it as a compliment because it's a fucking awesome movie and I don't give a shit what anybody says. So, this movie was made in 2009. It's rated R. It is 2 hours and 42 minutes, action, drama, mystery. And a lot of the reasons why this film is a fucking awesome film, I'm going to have to probably wait until spoilers to get to. But the other thing I thought I would mention is that this is probably going to be a pretty lengthy review. I may ramble a little bit. There's quite a lot of things that at least I think I would like to discuss and talk about and get into when it comes to this movie. And so, let me start by mentioning what's this movie about. Well, it's actually quite a complicated story, a complex one, and that's one of the positives here, and I think that what makes this movie, particularly good compared to most other, superhero kind of films, because, this might be considered kind of like a superhero type of film. But, yeah, let me explain what the fuck it's about. So, pretty much, it's about a group of people back in, I think the 40s is where the origins kind of are. And they pretty much form a group of, masked vigilantes and stuff. But this movie takes place in the 80s, which is way later on during a second group's forming later on. And pretty much whenever they're outlawed and they can't, fight crime anymore, if you will, someone ends up coming back around and killing them. And so they basically go about trying to figure out who is murdering, previous masked vigilantes who are in retirement. And so, yeah, it may not sound like the most exciting kind of story, but it actually is. It's a really well-told one. So, what are the things I'm going to say? This is another thing I was going to say. This is a movie that I regret not seeing in theaters because, by all means, the trailer pretty much made it look like a typical kind of superhero movie thing. But really, what I think, one of the points that I should get into that is a positive for this movie is not just that it's a complex, thought-provoking kind of story with, characters that are complex, but as well as it being not so typical as in the characters aren't just, good guys or something. A lot of them are what you'd consider probably anti-heroes, and, pretty much regular people, flawed, some broken, with their own kind of past, their own histories, their own mistakes that are made, and, that's what I'm saying kind of shines through in this film. They're not just standard heroes that are invincible or anything else. You really see the kind of humanity in these characters, and I think that's what makes this such a good story. But yeah, that's another positive I thought I'd put there, in that it's not, it's not a movie just with some assholes with capes or anything like that. They feel like actual people, and they have more depth to them than what a regular superhero movie would provide you with. The next thing I thought I'd mention here is that this was originally a graphic novel, well, a comic book series that was then made into a graphic novel by Alan Moore. And I have to say that I'll be touching on this later in spoilers because it's going to be quite a lengthy, probably, discussion as well. But absolutely great. If you like this movie at all, absolutely check out the graphic novel. The graphic novel is fucking amazing. As well as V for Vendetta, the movie. I've sadly not read that graphic novel. I've read Watchmen, but I haven't read V for Vendetta. But that's what I also thought I'd mention is V for Vendetta is a fucking amazing film as well. And that's also from Alan Moore, the graphic novel is. So check those out as well. If you're a fan of this, you will not be disappointed. Now, another thing I was going to mention is there was actually a video game that was made later on PlayStation 3, which is Watchmen: The End Is Nigh. And what I thought I would say about the game is, while it's admittedly very repetitive after a while, it's fun still to play as the characters from the story and have a continuation with the story. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is if you're a big fan of Watchmen and stuff like that, I would say the game is worth picking up if you're interested in at least continuing the story, and you like the characters Night Owl and Rorschach, if you like those characters and you want to see more of the story, check that out, but keep in mind it is a very repetitive game, but still worth it. Alright, so let me think here what another thing I was going to mention before I actually get into spoilers and really go into other things here. Okay, so here's the other thing I thought I would mention, though, is that some people may not like this movie. There are quite a few people I've talked to over the years that weren't really fond of this film, and I think it's because whereas other superhero movies focus on the action, this is another case of a story-driven, character-driven kind of film. So if you're wanting a superhero movie, a normal, typical one with just action and stuff like that, you're not going to like this one. This one's a very slow-paced kind of, film. It's a 2-hour and 42-minute film, but it's worth the runtime. It's worth all of that if you're someone who likes a really good story and really complex characters like I do. But if you're someone who's just wanting action-packed stuff, this probably will not be your film, and you might want to look elsewhere. That's what I also thought I'd fucking mention here. And, yeah, so I guess I should probably just go ahead and give it its review rating, because last time I fucking forgot to until the very end of the fucking video. So I thought I would give this an 8.5 heading towards 9. I almost settled with 9 just because, at least to me, it's a very fucking amazing movie. And a notable one among, the whole superhero kind of thing. And I think what makes this, special, another thing I should mention, is that this has like a kind of darker, grittier edge to it, because at least that's the kind of, hero movies that I prefer to watch. I mean, I'm not trying to exactly put down other superhero type of things, but I'm usually not so much a fan of those, and I prefer the more darker, grittier, based in realism kind of ones, kind of like The Punisher, Watchmen, Spawn, ones that, to me, feel a little bit more genuine and have a darker tone to them, and theme-wise and everything like that. But yeah, 8.5 heading towards 9. Another thing I should probably mention here is, like I said, the complex characters and the diversity of those characters in the story is what makes it awesome. But yeah, now it's time to be getting into spoilers and really breaking down at least what I think, different scenes, and going into some of the characters a little bit more. So for anybody who maybe wants to check out the trailer and then check out this movie, fucking peace. And for anybody who has already watched this movie, who's a big fan, or wants to maybe get into a little bit more of the details, let's go. So, the first thing I thought I would say here is that I absolutely love the opening to this film. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure this fucker stays lit. And so, yeah, a great opening from the song choices, the soundtrack, to the dialogue from Rorschach and the melancholy feel of the opening and stuff. And what I mean by that is, like, the whole opening where it kind of goes through an alteration of history and stuff. Because that's another thing that I think is really neat, is just like the detail there, history-wise. How it shows kind of how things could have been in an alternate sort of history and timeline and stuff is really neat to see. Sorry. And I predicted that shit. This did not stay lit at all. Okay. So, let me see here. Yeah, the melancholy feel and everything, because in a way, that's the other thing that I'll be getting into later on, is, like I said, at least for me, what makes this movie so fucking awesome is its story and its characters. And even though some of these characters are pretty reprehensible people that have done some pretty horrible fucking things, but even despite that, the good that they've done and everything else, that's what makes it kind of complex, and in a way, at least to me, you kind of feel terrible for them, and in a way root for them, the Watchmen, because, their whole point and purpose is to do good and to try to, save people, do something worthwhile, do something good. But a lot of times through this movie and everything, the kind of message is that, are they really doing good, and is it even really worth it? Is it really even going anywhere? Is it even attaining anything? And so yeah, like I said, the whole alternate history timeline with the opening, as well as the really great song choices throughout the entirety of the film, but in particular even the opening and stuff, And just the dialogue from Rorschach that was written is a fucking amazing set of dialogue as well. And I just like the dark, gritty atmosphere that not only his story arc and kind of line goes towards, but, you know, most of the film as well. And that's another thing I'd put here that I probably should have mentioned even before spoilers, is I love the noir feel in this movie, as well as the overall mystery, trying to find out who is killing these masked vigilantes in the story and everything. But the noir part is more so preserved kind of for Rorschach's part of the story, which I cannot lie is part of my, you know, my favorite part of the story in this movie and everything. But another thing I should get into before I actually start to get to the characters is the complex thing I put here. In a way, complex. It's different than what I'd normally say. In a lot of cases, I've usually said that either the book is better than the movie, or, you know, actually in most cases I'd probably say the book is better than the movie. Because a lot of times when I've read the book first, or read the book after, the book ends up being overall better just because it covers more of the story and has more there. In this case, it's not that way. In this case, I would say in a way, it's a rare circumstance where, in a sense, they both complement each other or are evenly matched, and in other ways, they are better than each other in other ways as well. And I have to flip over because, yeah, I wrote even more notes this time to kind of explain that. And that is that, well, let me go back because the first set is here. Yeah, sorry, a little bit unorganized. But what I put here is the graphic novel I feel like is better than the movie because of usually why a book is better than a movie. And that is that it covers more of the story than the movie does. The movie does a great job covering a lot of the story, but, you know, the graphic novel is going to cover more details, have more of that there. The art is amazing as hell, too. And there are some parts, at least to me, in this movie, and this is another thing I should have mentioned before spoilers, but there are parts of the movie that are a little bit cringy and not the best well acted, but that's what I'm saying. Whereas in the graphic novel, you don't get that. You just get all that positive, and you just get a great story, and you get more of that story. But where the movie, in some ways, is superior to the graphic novel, in my opinion, because there's also been kind of some criticisms towards the movie and everything. There's a lot of people, I think, that don't like this movie, but I do. But one of the positives that I feel like this movie does superior in a way to the graphic novel is mainly due to Jackie Earle Haley's role in this film. Because certain moments in the movie are overall better due to his great acting and how well handled the story arc for Rorschach is. And I mean, to be honest, here's another thing I thought I would, I guess, mention, is to me, Rorschach's story is such a damn well-told one, and he's such a good character, that really they could make their own kind of movie for Rorschach alone, in my opinion. And even back, you know, in the day, in those high school days, when I had taken a writing class, I even wrote a sort of short story when there was an assignment and stuff to do. I even sort of wrote a short story that was based off of Rorschach. You know, I never finished that short story, but I wrote a short story from Rorschach's perspective and stuff. And yeah, I'm just a fan of that character. So let me get into other things here, which I think these are going to be the last things and other reasons for why I think this film is a fucking great one. And that's, like I said, the complex story and kind of the complex questions that this story asks, in a way. And I'll kind of, I guess, maybe answer at least what my feeling is on some of these questions. But that's what I'm saying, is this movie raises some questions. And I feel like most great storytelling typically does. Either, you know, it teaches you kind of lessons on things, kind of gives you some, you know, something to learn, some kind of point, or raises questions about things in a thought-provoking way. Apologies, I'm going to take a fucking drink quick. That's what happens when you've talked for 10 fucking minutes straight like my dumbass does. But to further go into that, and I broke it down into different characters too, to be specific here, because these are the two characters at least I like the most in terms of the story and the questions that these characters kind of provide. And the first one is the comedian, which, like I said, he's done some pretty reprehensible, horrible acts in this film. But I think what makes this character, you know, a good character, and what makes this movie awesome is a lot of what he kind of goes on and talks about. And it's actually a pretty tragic character as well, because, like I said, you know, the Watchmen, the original goal for them was to do some sort of good, to do something good for the world, to try to help in ways where they felt like the police could not help. But the question that the comedian comes to, because he's also a retired veteran later on in the film and stuff, but it's actually really sad. But you basically see, you know, this guy who's a retired war veteran kind of lose hope in what he was trying to do and what this group was trying to do. But part of what, like I said, I think makes this character awesome is the theme and kind of thing he goes about talking is questioning whether good can actually even be done, or if it's even a joke, you know, or if it's a joke to even try to do good, because no matter what you do, attempts are sort of failed. And in the scheme of everything, you know, there's always going to be people causing harm and continuing that kind of cycle. There's always going to be terrible people, you know, these crimes and all this that they're trying to stop. And so he kind of comes to the conclusion, you know, is it even worth the effort to continue to try to do good when it's going to be a fruitless effort, pretty much? Which to me is a pretty important, which is a pretty, you know, in-depth, you know, question to kind of ask in a way. And like I said, a tragic character and a really sad one. And even though there are reprehensible acts that he ends up committing in this film, you know, it's still sad to see his demise because, yeah, we're in spoiler territory, and he dies pretty early on in the film. But it's still sad to see that due to, like I said, you know, his intention sort of for good, and seeing his hope kind of wane, and, you know, seeing, like I said, that question sort of raised, and him kind of coming to the conclusion that there is no point in doing good anymore, which is a fucking really sad kind of conclusion to come to. And that's where I thought I would kind of at least add my own thought on it. And that is, yeah, I would say that in a big way the comedian was wrong. And that is because even though it may be true, sorry, I'm getting another smoke and stuff, because like I said, this is going to be a lengthy fucking video due to this section right here. But even though it may seem an incredibly difficult thing to do, and an incredibly fruitless effort to try to stop terrible things, and to try to do what is right in life, at least to me, that doesn't mean you should give up trying. Because, yeah, let me light this fucker first. Because, yeah, at least to me, it's like, for every kind act that you do, for every good thing that you do, you are what makes the world a better place by doing that. So, while it seems fruitless to try to stop the terrible things in the world, you know, you giving up are opportunities to where you could have made the world a much better place. So at least to me, you know, even though this character has lost hope in doing good and trying to do good and everything, to me, you shouldn't lose hope in trying to do what is right. Because, yeah, like I said, for every kind act that you do throughout life, you're instilling hope in others, and you're furthering making the world much better than it, you know, is. How it should be, a good place. But alright, that's pretty much the comedian. Like I said, great acting. I sadly don't have the actor's name here to say. Great acting on his part, a tragic character, a really sad one, at least to me. But let's go on to the second character that I thought I would discuss, which is my favorite of the film, which is Rorschach, which to me he kind of asks another question. Because really, this whole group is a group of masked vigilantes, which means they're technically, you know, doing something illegal. You know, well, later on when they're outlawed and stuff. At first, they're not so much doing something illegal because it's condoned and it's okay. But then later on, when things fall apart, it's outlawed. But the one who refuses to back down is Rorschach, that character. One moment. And I think in a way, That's kind of what I admire about that character, is his refusal to try to solve the problem. Whereas everyone else in Watchmen, the Watchmen group, give up, he is the one who refuses to give up. He's the one who refuses to let everything go, and he's the one who tries desperately to seek a solution to the terrible place that he's in. And so he's another tragic character, because even though they've come to the conclusion that it is, fruitless and a failed attempt to try to make things better, he's the only one who sort of does not, give up. But it's tragic because in the process of him trying to find a solution, you see him go down a different path where he sort of, in a way, loses hope as well, because he becomes much, much darker than he should have ever been. And here's the other thing I thought I would get into, because, I put favorite character, favorite arc of the story. The noir feel is there. And excellent acting from Jackie Earle Haley. And to me, this is a part I thought was kind of humorous. In a way, I think this guy is funnier than the comedian, at least when he wants to be, whenever he tells a few jokes later on in the prison sequence and shit like that. For the guy with the name The Comedian, there's certain things he says that are kind of funny in a dark humor kind of way. But in a way, like I also said, Rorschach ends up being kind of funnier when he actually intends to later on, which I thought was kind of amusing. But let me see here. Okay. So let me get into Rorschach's character a little bit, the question that this character kind of raises. And whereas the comedians, the question that he kind of raised, like I said, was, is it even worth doing good? Or is it, just much smarter to just give up? Rorschach, on the other hand, like I said, does not give up, but becomes much, much darker because the conclusion that he comes to is the only way to stop the problem is to just start killing these criminals. So instead of delivering, justice and taking them in, he decides to go above the law and start killing them, because he believes that when, maybe by eradicating them, it will stop. Which doesn't end up being the case. Bad things still end up going on anyways. So, to me, the question that character kind of raises is it worth going above the law to try to solve the problem? And I would say, no, he's also wrong. And probably should have left it to the authorities. Because the reason I say that is, as you see him grow darker, while there are things that he does that some may agree with, there are other things that he does that ways in which he becomes incredibly cruel when he doesn't even need to be. He ends up sort of collapsing and giving into cruelty. And that is also probably due in part to his upbringing, which is brought about in this film. And like I said, to me, the comedian and Rorschach are probably the two most tragic people in this story. And, Rorschach and the comedian obviously deserved much better. And Rorschach obviously deserved much better. And I think that's the sad thing, is throughout the film you see how terrible his life was and how continuously terrible it continues to get. It just keeps getting worse for this character. And even though he's trying to do good and all of them are trying to do good, it just doesn't end up working out no matter what they try to do. And that's the other, like I said, kind of tragic thing with Rorschach is in the process of trying to do good, he ends up in a way becoming evil in a sense, because he just ends up becoming darker and darker and losing a lot of what could have made him good in that process. And in a way becoming just like the criminals that he was trying to stop in a sense. And so yeah, he basically gets kind of driven insane in a way. But he's still one of my favorite characters. Let me see what else here. I thought it was also sad, by the way, that the psychiatrist in this film just pretty much instantly gives up on him. I mean, really, in a way, it seems like a lot of people give up on that character, Rorschach, and kind of let him do his own thing, and he kind of just descends into madness. And that's also going to be leading into one of the other points that I thought I would get to, which is that, this film, unlike other hero films, these heroes actually die because they're real people. And there's quite a few of them that die, and it's pretty tragic and sad in this film. and there's a lot of kind of dark humor, and there's a lot of moments that, you know, like I said, you know, raise important questions and stuff like that, as well as, yeah, just seeing a lot of people trying to do good that fail. And one of the things that I thought was a really sad kind of moment in this movie, but I think in a way more so in the graphic novel, was when the original Night Owl dies. Because you have to, when you watch this movie, you see that the original Night Owl is, you know, pretty much, you know, retired. You know, he hasn't done any bad, unlike some of the other group members of the Watchmen. He just, you know, he pretty much tried to do what was right. He's retired, and pretty much becomes ambushed by a group of hoodlum gang member fuckers who end up killing him for pretty much no reason at all, just because they're fucking terrible. Well, there is a sort of reason, but I'm not going to really get into that. If you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, to me, it was really sad because, you know, I think, you know, in any kind of movie, in any kind of series, seeing a character who is trying to do solely good to be just mercilessly fucking killed and beaten to death like this one is really sad. So yeah, that was sad, as well as, you know, the comedian's death. And then I put here Rorschach's death. And that's what the complex kind of thing I was going to get to is while he descends into madness and kind of becomes something terrible, to me, the thing that I admire about him is that the fact that he does not give up and that he continuously tries to find a solution and tries to kind of find the truth in things. And sadly, that's what ends up later on getting him killed. And so to me, it was really a heartbreaking moment to see this character die. You know, at least I guess he died standing up for what he believed in. And now I'm trying to think, because I could have swore there was another point I was going to be getting into. But I think at this moment, my mind went blank on that point. But yeah, like I tried to kind of explain, to me, these are the reasons that make this movie so damn good. It's the thought-provoking aspects, the questions that it kind of raises, as well as the, you know, depth of these characters that are very well written, believable characters, and a dark, gritty edge that this film provides us with. That's what I think makes this movie good, whereas a lot of people don't really like this movie because they feel like it doesn't live up to the source material, the graphic novel. In a way, I'd agree with them, but like I've said, in another way, you know, like moments like Rorschach's story arc are handled so well in this movie, to me, you can't say this movie's terrible. You know, it may not have lived up to the graphic novel in your opinion, but it handles a lot of aspects of the story very fucking well. So to me, they go hand in hand, and they complement each other. Another thing I should have mentioned is there's like a show, the Watchmen Show, and I don't know how, you know, good that is. To be honest with you, the trailers didn't look all that appealing to me, but there is also that to consider if you're a big enough fan of this series, as you should well be, in my opinion, because it's fucking awesome as hell. But I think that's all the points that I need to get to. I've dragged this video out long as fuck, like I knew it would be, just because of the complex questions that this movie asks, and I thought I would kind of at least answer with my perspective on. But I hope that you guys have an amazingly awesome, badass day, and that you're watching, you know, some cool superhero, anti-hero, badass movies, you know, enjoying your summer, because this is made during the summertime when I'm making this, or, you know, even reading some badass comics or graphic novels and stuff like that. Whichever you think is awesome, I hope you have that awesome, badass-filled day, and I will see you guys in the next movie review that I do. This is Agony333, signing the fuck out. Peace, guys. Have an amazing one.